So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the RGM podcast with Paul Maloney. How are you doing? You all right? Yeah, good, good.
I'm, I'm all right.
You're all right, mate. As a true Sheffield lad.
Yeah, I am born and bred.
Yeah, mate, me too, me too. Support the other side of the city, though, mate, in regards to football and stuff, but, you know.
Well, there is only one side, so
Fair enough, fair enough. I thought we might get to at some point, both being Sheffield lads. Yeah, mate, it's such a great honour to have you on the show, mate. An electronic music pioneer, producer to legends, podcaster now, teacher. You're sharing your knowledge of
yeah.
this in music industry life that you've led. It's really difficult place to start, mate. Having just listened to your audio book and you telling me the story of your life, particularly in the earlier days, I feel like I've been down a Martyn Ware rabbit hole, mate. So if I feel a little bit over familiar, it's only because I've been listening to you a lot and enjoying.
Listen, it's a weird thing writing an autobiography, I have to say,
Yeah.
because excuse me, the one thing I wasn't prepared for is because when you're writing it, I don't know about other people, and some people use ghostwriters. I wrote every word of it, so I wanted to be as honest and as true to the kind of Sheffield spirit as possible. Some would say blunt occasionally, and but when it's out, then you realise that everybody knows your business. I wasn't quite, I've not fully processed it when I was writing it. It was just like pouring it out. And then you're going, well, everybody knows all the kind of intimate details of my life now. And it felt very strange for a bit, actually, I have to say. I've got used to it now. But
Yeah. So, like through your career and stuff, did you kind of keep guarded from your personal life? And now this is quite a new
yeah,
to people.
I've never been in love with the idea of celebrity at all.
Yeah.
I am a fairly, I wouldn't say I'm shy now, but I used to be quite a shy person. And there's always that kind of, which I talk about in the book, actually. This Sheffield thing, I think, is real.
Mm.
It's not just Sheffield, but Sheffield is a perfect example of it. This kind of, it's almost like consciously, we're quite bolshy about Sheffield's greater than anywhere, and we should be proud of what we achieve and the fantastic things we do, and football teams and but really, underneath it all, I feel there's a level of lack of confidence in Sheffield when it's addressing the world, and because I come across this a lot, and people, I get asked to be on radio programs and write articles and stuff about Sheffield, and it's one of my big themes is this kind of, it starts as a kind of self-effacing thing, and not wanting to show off, not wanting to be the big I am, but in fact you need a bit of that to make the most out of the opportunity that you've got. So I mean, funnily enough, my son lives in Manchester. I've always had quite an ambivalent relationship with Manchester, because they're the opposite, aren't they? I mean, they are they are brash. Not everybody, of course. I'm talking in general. In general terms, it's a more confident city. It's got more look at us about it.
Well,
And
agree more.
and the halfway house for me is like Liverpool, which is like part not for the likes of us and part exceptionally proud of their city, right? So anyway,
No, it's really interesting you say that, because I'm born and bred Sheffield, lived there 40 years, lived in Manchester for the last 4 years. So,
right.
I do see that. And as a Sheffield lad myself, I think I'm going through a little bit of a identity crisis myself at the minute, just feeling like I'm blagging it, feeling like, I've built up this magazine RGM that's doing really well across the country now, which originated from Sheffield. It started as Rate Good Music, but I had to change it because people don't understand rate. in different
Yeah,
parts
yeah.
of the road rate in different parts of the country. So it changed to RGM. And you're right about Manchester. It does have this aura about it and arrogance about it. But one thing I miss about Sheffield is how green it is when I go back. And I've got a new
Yeah.
appreciation for Sheffield when I do go home. After not when now I don't live in the city, I've got a new appreciation for how great the city is and the people.
Well, really, my son lives just at the start of Salford, so across the river, and literally 10 minutes from the centre. And um, there's bugger all in terms of green spaces.
No,
They've
no.
got the canals and everything, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
But it's really intensely industrial or post-industrial, And of course, when you grow up somewhere, you just assume that everywhere's a bit like that, don't you? Or you just think that's normal. But it is an incredibly green city. And one of my favourite things is is when I go to Hillsborough. My sister lives in Greenhill, and the views from up there out to the moors are just amazing. And then you take the trip to Hillsborough, and you're going up and down the hills and everything, and the views are incredible, and all that stuff that I took for granted when I was growing up in Sheffield.
I used to live in a house just up from Malin Bridge in the big steep bit. I used to walk up that big steep hill going up towards Wisewood, and I had a view.
Yeah.
I had an amazing view um, over Riverlin and that, and just having that
Oh,
view of my house
lovely,
where
beautiful.
yeah. Well, I'm just looking out my window now, and I can just see concrete stuff and ballards and stuff. And
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? So, I mean, it's not a coincidence the entire concept of rambling as a leisure activity originated, in Sheffield, because it was like a way of mitigating, the mental health effects of working in,
yeah.
very dark and dangerous factory situations normally. And I remember my dad when I was growing up. He was quite old when they had me. He was 50, so he was more like my granddad, really. But uh, he used to take us out into go on the bus. We didn't have any money, but we didn't have a car or anything. But go out on the bus to like Foxhouse and out into Derbyshire and stuff like that. And that was like, to us, it was like a world of wonder, this beautiful, and Castleton and Hethersage and all that stuff. Loved it, loved it, loved
John
it.
Tavern.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And to the extent that I mean, I've been married now for, what is it, 30 years near on. And in the first 10 years, I was considering moving back to Sheffield or near Sheffield, and went to see a place in Hethersage, and it was it was beautiful because you could, obviously the prices were much less than London. Yeah. Could buy a fucking castle, right? And and there was this beautiful house came onto the market, which I went to see, and it had a garden that swept down to the River Trent, and all you could see out of the bedroom window, it's like something out of Grand Designs or something, was the full length of the River Trent with trees on either side. You couldn't see anything of the 20th century or 21st century at all. And I just thought, oh my God, it was just a bit too early for me to go that bucolic, But
Well, I live on the east side of Manchester, so I can get to Sheffield in 45 minutes. I don't like to be too far away from the old place, but then I've got the benefit.
State package people, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Snake Pass. Woodhead's my favourite these days, but we all have his favourite roads, I suppose. I don't know why I'm talking about this.
Anyway,
Yeah, have you got a favourite road, Martyn, for being on the road?
very Alan Partridge.
I know, yeah, it is. Yeah, I do apologise.
Do you know I don't drive, so I don't
Yeah,
really.
oh, yeah, yeah, sure, yeah.
I prefer trains.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you mentioned there just your upbringing in Sheffield, a very working class upbringing that you go into quite a lot of detail in the book as well, which is lovely. You paint a nice picture of the old industrial ways of Sheffield and how bleak it was, but you paint a good picture of the history of Sheffield as well when you talk about your upbringing, which is nice.
Yeah, it's well. I mean, I think it's wrong to say it was bleak.
Okay.
I mean, not having money is different to having a kind of, black and white existence.
Mm.
I mean, my upbringing was very colourful. I think, looking back on it now, there was a lot more, a bigger sense of community, and we didn't have really very much in the way of luxuries or anything. But we had, lovely people lived around us, and we could play out in the street, and we knew everybody in our local street. And Hope Street was just off Western Street, just down from the Arts Tower. And when I was growing up, and then moved to Burngreave and all that stuff, and that was less salubrious. Yeah. But we grew up in council houses, and everybody, there's a kind of patronising looking back on that. Oh, you poor thing, council. Yeah. Do you know what? They were amazing, because we grew up in a two down house with an outside toilet and no bathroom, and then all of a sudden we were given a house with central heating and a bathroom. I mean, I couldn't believe it. It was brilliant. And then, so on and so forth. Obviously, the rest, as soon as we moved to London, there's a different thing entirely. But so anyway, I'm very proud of Sheffield, very proud of my roots. And as I mentioned in the book, there's a lot of, obviously, 40 years in the music industry in London, I've got a lot of contacts and stuff. And the general attitude towards Sheffield, certainly in my world, is everybody thinks it's a really cool city, Yeah. So that's why I'm saying, coming back to my original point, it needs to be a bit more proud of itself, a bit more pushy, for want of a better word. Because, I'm also involved in various, as you get older, you get asked to be, involved in various more serious endeavors, and, kind of ambassadors for various things, and on boards and all that stuff. And, I do honestly think, I do take an interest in, this is quite Alan Partridge as well, in not traffic redevelopment in the centre of Sheffield, but I do take an interest in urban planning and all that stuff. Okay. It's something that fascinates me, because I can see clearly what needs to happen with Sheffield, and it's all to do with funding. There was a consultancy not long ago where they were putting the word out saying, what would you like the centre of Sheffield? What would be good for the centre of Sheffield? And it's just so blindingly obvious to me. The key asset that Sheffield has, apart from the greenery and all that, is the people, and the spirit of the people, and the kind of community spirit and all that stuff. So you want to do stuff that kind of creates a reason for people to congregate in the centre. So things like, I don't know, maybe you have whatever the 21st equivalent is of a bandstand, where you have, you have music performances, or a street theatre, or entertainers, or stuff to give people lots of kind of cafes and stuff, and outdoor spaces. Everybody goes, oh, it's bloody raining all the time, it's cold. Well, you know what? Paris doesn't have a problem with it, and it's not, the weather's not that much different in Paris,
Manchester don't,
or London for that matter. So I just think it needs, it's just such a tragedy we're not in the EU anymore, because EU funding, speaking of Manchester, has really transformed Manchester. Not just EU funding, but a lot of outside funding. I mean, there's a big thing about Abu Dhabi and funding in Manchester at the moment and all that stuff. But anyway, so I understand what Sheffield needs. It's not a matter of waving a magic wand and making it happen. I mean, it needs some serious consideration. But a lot of it isn't about spending loads of money. It's about having the political will to do it.
Yeah. No, it is frustrating as a Sheffield lad just walking down Fargate and just seeing how run down and empty the
Oh,
shops
it's
are. And
awful.
it's just so it used to be really hustle bustle. It used to be a great place to walk down, and they've moved it all down to the moor. They've kind of forgot about that part of town, and it's frustrating to see.
Well, Castle Market and Castle Square and all that down there is an absolute shithole.
Yeah.
And it needs, they've been talking about redeveloping it for years, haven't they? So, I mean, it's funny. I was, as I mentioned in the book, looking back at the 70s when I finished school. The general feeling at the time is that we were, that Thatcher had done for us with with the economic imperative of shutting down all steelworks and everything. Do you know what? Anybody who wanted a full-time job then could get one. Anybody. I mean, it might not be the job you want, but the jobs were there and available full-time, 40 hours a week. It was a thing of shame and hardly known to do like part-time work. And the city at that time, you got the hole in the road, you got the whole connectedness of, Pinsford Street and Fargate and up to the cathedral and the moor. And it was, it needed updating, but it was vibrant,
Oh, yeah, I can remember going under Old Roll, and you used to see all bootleggers with the tapes on.
Yeah.
used to collect they used to be on like old bed sheets. Used to collect all the tapes and run off when coppers come. It was just a vibrant.
Well, you know what? It's not. It's not a. I don't think it's looking at the past with rose tinted glasses. You could literally go to town on a 2p bus ride, and you could justify walking the whole length of town, right from, say Castle Market, which was vibrant, and all the the kind of trendy clothing shops down there, Harrington's and all that. You'd walk up through the hole in the road, all the way up into town. Lots of shops, lots of stuff going on. The odd stall here and there, Peace Gardens, and then down the moor was rocking, And where are we now?
Yeah. Well, hopefully things will get better there. But let's crack on with the music here. We can, we can talk about Sheffield all day. So going back into the book a little bit. You went to school. You met a young, cool lad called Phil Oakey there, and that kind of changed everything, really. You were introduced to house parties, the girls, the drugs, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That was an interesting chapter. That I was surprised how honest you were about those days as well with it.
Well, it's an important part of things, isn't it? I mean, meeting people like Cabaret Voltaire and stuff like that as well, and then they introduced us to the kind of things like blues clubs in Broome Hall, and fell in love with dub music and stuff like that. And then, of course, the fantastic Rare and Racer, which breaks my heart every time I go past it because it's still there. Why have they shut it down? What, I mean, the guy who was there in 1972, I can't remember his name, but I went there just before it shut recently, and he was still there. I couldn't believe it, and that was a major part of my education, musical education.
Yeah.
That shop.
For people that don't know the story, Rare and Racy is just on Devonshire Green, not Devonshire Green. It's Devonshire Green just off there, isn't it? And the council decided to close this row of interesting, cool shops because they're going to build some apartments. Never happened. They've just closed the shops and they've not done the development. Typical kind of Sheffield shitty planning decisions.
Well, that Rare and Racer was important. But also on the corner of that row of shops was Mr. Kite's wine bar, which is one of the first wine bars in Sheffield. And that was like a kind of, that's where all the bands used to meet and hang out and like.
Is it the Green Bar now? Is it the Green Bar now, that one? Is it Green?
Don't know what it's called.
Yeah. Okay.
But we used to go there occasionally with the cabs. I mean, obviously all the pubs nearby as well, but the wine bar seemed very posh, you know.
Yes, I've got.
And there was also a cocktail bar on West Street.
Hmm.
Oh, I can't remember his name now. Just around the corner from there, and we used to go there as well. But Mr. Kites was legendary because, you know, you see Martin Fry in there and Steve Singleton and the Cabs and anyway, we thought we were cut above because we could afford a glass of you know, horrible cheap red wine.
And you describe buying your clothes from female shops as well, going in with Phil.
Yeah,
It's straight away you were different, and you wanted to do things your way. Even at the early days of the Human League, you know, the birth of it all, where that you created this monster that it became. You know, just those early days of you and Phil just being different from the start and wanting to do things your way came across really well in the book.
yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a matter of timing as well because the you know, got to bear in mind that it was the time of the start of glam, so it was at the end of the hippie period, and then the big boom thing was, you know, the big realization, of course, Bowie and everything,
Mm.
and Ziggy Stardust, but also Roxy Music was a big
Yeah.
event for us, and everybody I knew. It kind of signposted a more artistic and a more glamorous kind of future,
Mm.
which, for all its good points, Sheffield wasn't a glamorous place. You know, as I say in the book, it's like in the gutter looking at the stars. You know,
Yeah.
and so, and then that ties into the kind of, you know, the kind of working class theory of working all week and then going out at the weekends and dressing up, which is a big northern thing. Interestingly, I did an installation with my company Illustrious, an immersive sound installation in Blackburn about Northern Soul, in an old Northern Soul club which had been shut for 20 years. We reopened it and kind of made the ghosts come to life and all that stuff. And I realised that it wasn't just Northern Soul, but this kind of working your nuts off all week and then partying at the weekend. And back in the days, it was literally a packet of cash you got in your hand, right? I remember my dad coming home with the brown paper packet with the holes in, so he could see that he's not being cheated out the money he's due, and all that. I can't imagine it now, can you? But and just for a couple of nights, you had this kind of escape from the humdrum, you know. And so, like, glam coming along was a bit like that in general terms for us. And because we were so young, we were going, oh my God, this is so glamorous. And also the proliferation of kind of American culture and TV and film, and also it's at the end of the kind of space race
Yeah.
kind of era as well. So you've got all these things all mashed up together. And then we started looking at different musical ideas, you know. I mean, I had very eclectic taste, so a lot of experimental stuff used to get just based on I was buying anything I could find that was futuristic, basically, from Rare and Racer, because it didn't cost much. It was give it back for half the price if you didn't like it anyway. So everything from like experimental computer music, which I wasn't really fond of, but lots and lots of kind of prog rock type stuff as well was a big influence. And so you add, yeah, if you add glam,
Yeah.
love of Bowie and similar acts, kind of this eclectic stuff, meeting Phil Oakey, who had got a much broader range of, you know, his parents were well off, so he got a big allowance because I don't think they spent much time with him, so it was like they were chucking money at him, so he could buy all these records, which I couldn't afford to buy until I started work, and then so he taught me lots of stuff.
Yeah. So
And this is like a big, rich mix of stuff that then translated into what we did later.
Well, the you mentioned it was part of, at the end of the hippie movement, and like when the band got a bit of traction. I know you've got a long running relationship with John Lydon, but in the
Yeah,
enemy, he called you fucking hippies right at the beginning.
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
I found that funny.
Well, trendy hippies, I think he said,
Oh,
which
was
was
it? Okay, fair enough.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That
Two
must have
words.
been quite, that must have been quite a moment just to get a mention by John and in the NME at the time.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, if I had the right of reply at the time, I would have said fucking pub rock band.
Fair enough.
Very good one.
Yeah.
It's like you couldn't get anything much more traditional than the kind of sound palette of that, could you
Oh,
really?
yeah, definitely.
Brilliantly done. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying, there was nothing to me, to us at the time. It felt like it was the last candle burning bright before it goes out of rock and roll. Because really, it was like cynically trying to retread the tires of traditional rock and roll and the palettes and everything. Whereas we thought, well, the future is clearly going to be these new instruments
Yeah.
and new range of sounds, and so not everybody's interested in that, of course. And I loved, a lot of the punk stuff at the time. I loved the Damned, for instance. I thought fantastic. And I went to see a lot of them. We toured with Susan and the Banshees, who quickly evolved into a kind of post-punk thing, really. And so, in the fullness of time, people looking back on that period look at punk and they go, "Oh, yeah, it was fantastic. They were chucking out all the old stuff and everything." No, they weren't. No, they weren't. We'd already been through what the rest of the country was going through because we were obsessed in the early 70s with kind of early to mid 70s with with the New York scene. So people like New York Dolls, the Ramones, even Blondie, early Blondie, Suicide, all of those bands and many more were much more radical and shall we say outliers
Yeah.
than the kind of cynically marketed punk revolution, which the echo of that, of course, is in the future, is Britpop, and that ludicrous confected thing between Oasis and Blur, like, oh, what do you prefer, the Ruttles or the Kinks? I mean, fuck's sake.
Which, which one do you like best, Oasis or Blur?
I don't like either of them very much, to
Fair
be
enough.
honest.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well,
I mean, Oasis wrote some really good songs, I have to say. Still, interestingly, I was remastering some of Terrance Trent D'Arby's,
yeah.
well, his first album, which I produced, and I was remastering it for a re-release recently, and the guy I was doing it with, Barry Grint, who's like one of the best mastering engineers in Britain. I said, "What you've been working on?" Because they do loads of stuff, and he said, "Well, I've just been doing a reissue of some the original Oasis albums," and he played me a bit, and he just sounded terrible. I mean, just the sonic quality of it. They
Yeah.
said, "Yeah, what?" I mean, they just. I won't get into technical details, but basically, it was about the vibe on radio, and they didn't care about anything else. So I thought, Blur was a bit more quirky and interesting, but you know what? It was all just bollocks, wasn't it?
Well, you mentioned a massive name there that I can't go past really without just asking a question. You talk about it in the book, meeting David Bowie. Wow.
Yeah.
And just, him entering the room and you could feel the presence of him straight away. and it was at one of your gigs, and it made you really nervous. You had to step up because you knew Bowie was in the crowd.
I knew it. He came into our dressing room.
Yeah.
I was talking to him. In fact, I've got a photo of it,
Wow.
and to prove I didn't imagine it. And 10 minutes before we were due to go on stage, yeah. So it would make you nervous, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that way to give you
And
a
yeah, so it was good. And then the following week, he was in very kindly mentioned in top of NME that he thought we were the future of music, or he had witnessed the future of music. So that gave us a lot of confidence that we were heading in the right direction.
What one little thing you mentioned about Bowie was, just his humor, which doesn't sometimes come across when people describe him. How funny he is and down to earth and just laid back, and you just imagine him being this this I don't know, this alien, don't you? But
Yeah,
when you told the story of him being this real person and funny and cheeky and just down to earth David,
I think he always, I mean, as evidenced by like Tin Machine, I think he just wanted to be one of the boys.
Yeah.
He liked. I mean, I know I can't claim to be one of his close friends, but I know a lot of people who knew him really well, and including Tony Visconti and Kevin Kahn, who runs the Bowie, the main Bowie fan club site, and they were all very close to him, of course, and he said he was just a laugh.
Yeah.
He wanted to be, in the words of Pulp, one of the common people, but of course he couldn't be, could he? It's impossible. And I think underneath it all, I think that might be why he got so hooked on cocaine
Mm.
and smoking, and a lot of people, and that's eventually what killed him, I think, probably. And they say that cocaine is like, it triggers the same kind of pleasure receptor centers as the first time you fall in love, for instance, or that warm feeling of of being amongst friends and good acquaintances. And it makes me wonder if that sort of thing might have been part of his addiction problems.
Another really interesting part of the book as well was describing sleeping in the bedroom next to Iggy Pop with
Oh my God.
urge everybody, if you're going to invest in the book, invest it for this chapter first. I'd rather read of this chapter. Wow. As many acquaintances queuing up around the hotel, just waiting to spend a bit of time with Iggy Pop, and you were the person that slept at the side of his bedroom, mate.
Yeah, it was the short straw if you got the bedroom next to it. He was a true rock and roll animal. That's all I'm going to say. You need to buy the book.
Yeah, sure. No, yeah, we'll tease people with these little stories as well, because
Exactly.
all the names that you've met, George Martin George Martin, to name a few, Tina Turner, you jump started a career, all these type of stories are in the book. So working with Pink Floyd, all these big massive names that I think people just throw around without appreciating the stature of these artists that you've worked with. I think it's quite phenomenal to. How do you look back on working with these people? Like looking back from now and just think, can you still quite believe that?
Well, no, not really. I mean, all I can think is that I was I don't know. It seemed to me that it was important to take advantage of any
Yeah.
opportunities you got. So I was living, when we got signed to Virgin, me and Glenn were both living in Notting Hill. And I was living like literally 5 minutes away from Virgin Records on Portobello Road. And so we used to literally be down there 3 or 4 times a week, and became friends with a lot of the people who worked there. And it was quite a compact company at that point. So you could get to go in there and meet all the heads of department and discuss tactics and, you know, all that stuff, and just hang out at the pub, you know, and all the things that are important in terms of business and human relationships we were doing intuitively. And I really believe that our openness to new ideas was the key to it all, or openness to trying things out. And it takes a certain amount of bollocks, but I didn't think of it in those terms at the time. It was just, it felt exciting, and it felt like, oh, how can I explain it? It's like if you didn't try it, you'd regret it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not, so it's different from, oh my God, I'm so frightened in case I'll fail. There was none of that. It was like I was more frightened of missing an opportunity to see if I could do it. And if it didn't work out, that it seemed that there were going to be a lot more opportunities coming along that you could try. And that kind of philosophy has lived with me all my life in all the things I've done.
I still see a lot of people out in the community that don't put themselves out of the comfort zone and just end up looking back on life and not doing much. You know, I'm just thinking of personal friends. I'm thinking of people I've known through the years where,
There were plenty in Sheffield. There were plenty in Sheffield.
Yeah.
And in fact, I had a funny, I don't know if I mentioned it in the book, but no, I probably didn't. When me and Phil reconnected, no, it's later than the book goes up to. When I reconnected with Phil in the early 2000s, I was talking to him and said, you know, he was telling me, I mean, I didn't really poke him about this or try and elicit any reaction. I said, you know, have you ever thought what might have happened if you'd have moved out of Sheffield? He said, I didn't want to. I went down to London one day. The kind of turning point was I went down King's Road. This is when they'd had a couple of hits with Dare. So he was walking down King's Road. This is from the horse's mouth, by the way. I was walking down King's Road, and nobody recognised me. I said, oh, it's not for me, this. So I think it's the classic big fish, little pond thing, isn't it? And so there's that, and there's also like there's a great term, Irish term called begrudgery. Have you heard of that? It's like where you begrudge people's success because it makes you feel like a failure. And I think there's a lot of that in the music. There used to be a lot of that in the music scene in Sheffield. The exceptions were people like, you know, the Cabs, who were very generous. They were like our mentors. And, you know, an ABC and people like that, we all supported each other at the time. But the ones who, it seemed to be the ones who were more desperate to succeed, but didn't really understand, didn't have the, you know, the tools to do it, that really bugged them, you know. So anyway, Sheffield's not exceptional in this respect. I'm sure it's the same everywhere.
Sure.
It's interesting.
Yeah, well, you mentioned, just going back to Phil there, you know, in the book, it's not all plain sailing, and then you know, yeah, well, the you know, the band you technically got sacked from the Human League at some point. Describe that and, you know, the feelings behind all of that, and you know, that must have been hard to take at the time.
It was. I mean, you know, it's well documented, but it's, well, there are two main things. One is completely unjustified, and two is completely unflagged or unexpected. You know, there was no indication at all, and I wasn't being naive. I'm not stupid. I'm quite an empathetic individual. I can feel. I'm pretty good at kind of feeling atmospheres, and you know, as proven by the fact I've had a long career in production, and part of that is about being a psychologist, really, and understanding how to, and understanding people, how they're feeling, and blah blah. No indication at all. So it came as a complete hand grenade.
Yeah.
And it was, it was obviously well documented. I don't really want to go into it again, but it was all a fait accompli. It was all pre-planned, and it was just get two bands for the price of one, really.
Well, yeah, and how do you feel about seeing them touring these days? Because they've been touring recently. Is that still?
It's fine. I'm not. We did a tour with them in 2005, the Steel City tour with them and ABC. So, the hatchet is buried. We bump into them quite a lot.
Yeah,
it's fine.
So moving on to Heaven 17 and BEF and all these amazing artists that you've brought up and took under your wing as well, under the BEF British. I can't say it. Electric Foundation. I was thinking.
Yeah.
But yeah, just your old mate Glenn, who used to work in he didn't used to work in Co-op with you. He mentioned he took over the Co-op after you managed it.
Yeah, Gleaglestown.
Yeah, Gleaglestown, where I'm from originally, which is yeah. So yeah, I was born and bred around Gleaglestown, and so I was just wondering where could that be? It's got its own.
I don't know. It was near some new blocks of flats. That's all I remember.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, fair enough. And yeah, so Glenn, your old mate from Sheffield, got him in as a singer, and he never let you down since, and just flew with it, and just did amazing things, and it was original in his own right out there, wasn't he? It felt like he just he took the opportunity and ran with it, and
yeah, all the pretend bands that were the messing about bands that we had in Meet Whistle, which was the arts club, really, the youth arts club. That we were messing about with. He was always the singer. I mean, just bulletproof confidence.
Yeah.
Good looking lad. All the girls loved him. He took full advantage. And but at the time we were looking for a singer for the Human League, he'd moved down to London. So and he was in a band called 57 Men, which became called Wang Chung when he left. And
was he in a band with the guy who used to be in EastEnders, who you did a Sheffield Wednesday song with as well? Is there a link there?
Oh yeah, one of the pretend bands at Meet. Ian
yeah, that's him. Yeah, that's it.
Mr. Greg and Red. Yeah. That was with Lister was Addie Newton from Club DVA as well. And yeah, Reddington. Reddington did a couple of football records with me for Wednesday as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The Sheffield Wednesday ones. But my dad was a Wednesday fan. My brother's a Wednesday fan. I'm a Blade. And they had, particularly when they got to Wembley every other year, it felt like Wednesday when they were doing really well. It just felt like it's not my favourite memory of music, having those Sheffield Wednesday tunes forced your role as a Blade.
I know. It was funny. I love, to be honest, that single that we did, If It's Wednesday, It Must Be Wembley, which is a play on that film, If It's Tuesday, It Must Be Belgium, which was around at the time. And I had this idea, it was my idea to do the picture cover, where we had like the traditional team shot at the start of the season, in rows, and me and Reddington in the middle in goalkeeper strip. But the rest, all the players wearing like Blues Brothers Ray-Ban glasses, and only us without the glasses on. I thought it was quite neat.
I can remember it vividly. It reminded me of Howard Pressman, just because you had your goalie top on, didn't you?
That's right, yeah.
In the middle, and it was like a black and white photo, weren't it? And blue and white.
That's right. Yeah. And the greatest thing was they have like when a team gets to Wembley, they have what's called a players' pool, which is somebody from the team, from the squad, organises all the kind of money-making opportunities and signs contracts on behalf of them and blah blah blah. And so the head of the players' pool was Chris Waddle. So I was mates with all of them at that time. But I've got a contract somewhere. I don't know where it is, where I signed between me and Virgin Records on one side and Chris Waddle and Sheffield Wednesday on the other side about that record. And so I was doing all the negotiations with him, which was great because I just think what a player, you know.
Oh yeah, I was at Wembley in '93, bang on line with Waddle's free kick when he scored it in top corner
Right.
for Sheffield United.
Oh, I
Um,
went insane. You can imagine.
and I thought we just, I thought we were nearly going to get there. Alan Cork with his lucky beard scored, and then Mark Bright finishes off. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
good times.
Well, it didn't do us any good, did it?
No, fair enough. But well, yeah, just moving on a little bit with the music. I'm going to come back to the football and the teaching and
Yeah.
the stuff coming up shortly. Um, so yeah, so you mentioned him earlier. You call him in the book Sonada. Terrance Trent D'Arby.
Fernando.
It's a
Fernando.
Sananda. Sorry, my pronunciation's bad. So it's Sananda. Other people will know them as Terrance Trent D'Arby, and
Yeah.
doing your producing stuff. Moved on from Heaven 17. The amazing relationship and the how working on his first album just kind of felt like a glove creatively between you two.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
A nice story that you told in the book there.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who remembers his emergence onto the scene, see, people don't see the what goes on behind it or before
Yeah.
it. To the world, it looked like this kid had just emerged, fully formed,
Yeah.
instantaneously as a superstar, And the truth of the matter is, he was with a management stroke kind of development company, doing various things and trying out different things for I think 4 years before that in Germany. Then, Germany, and then moved to Britain. And so a lot of stuff had been happening. He'd been writing loads of. I found out later. He'd been writing loads of demos and songs, and in fact, the demo tape that I was sent was the most astonishing demo tape I've ever heard. I mean, it didn't feature any of the songs that ended up on the first album, but a lot of the songs sounded like kind of Stevie Wonder outtakes. He was in a kind of different headspace at that point. But what was clear was, firstly, he could write songs. Secondly, his voice was just unbelievable. It was like, where's this kid come from? And I remember ringing up immediately and going, I've got to have a meeting. I really want to do this album. Can we have a meeting tomorrow? And I thought, I was laying there listening to it and thinking, God, I hope he's not ugly. I hope he's not fat, or I hope he's not. He's not a nutcase, or do you know what I mean? It could. There are so many things have to be in alignment for you to be a superstar. It's not just the quality of the work; it's the way you look. Can you dance? Can you do it? And of course, you meet him, and he's looks like a god, and he dances like a god, and he sings like a god, and you're going, right? This is like getting the ball a yard out in front of an empty net. I can't fuck this up. It's impossible. And I was right. It was like all I had to do is to make sure that he understood that I was going to. I knew what he needed to do, because I'm a big soul fan, right? I mean, I used to go to Northern Soul clubs, and I've always loved Motown, and my sisters used to play me that when I was little, and it's in my soul. I understand sort of black soul music, and but I also love pop music. So like that kind of hybrid of influences is perfect for him. And of course, I'd done Tina Turner by this time, so my stock was quite high, and I'd done loads of other productions after Tina, but none had reached the heights of what would happen with Sananda. So I remember saying to him, I said, first thing at the meeting was, we will create this bubble in the studio, me, you, and Phil Legg, the engineer. it's us against the world. We will make this, and and the session players and the and the musicians. We will, and I said to the record company at the time, I said, I will, and I'll take responsibility for this. I will not accept any interference at all from the record company. You're not allowed, in fact, into the studio until we've finished it. Then if you want to give us some notes, we'll consider it. But you can't interfere with the creative process. And to their eternal credit, they let us get on with it. And the rest is history. It was I think, and it's still, I'm very proud of it. I think it's an incredible piece of work all around. And I've just actually done a Dolby Atmos remix of the whole thing, which you can hear on Apple Music, some other places as well. But and you can hear the new 3D mix of Dawn headphones in binaural. It's amazing.
Wow, it's just such an iconic moment, and the music industry being it like it is as well. You describe in the book that you got a letter from him wanting to work with different people after that as well. So it's always highs and lows, isn't it? There's never.
No. He didn't want to work with different people.
Oh, okay.
He wanted to do it all himself.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. He wanted to. Yeah.
It wasn't like he was going, no, I found a better producer or a better engineer or something.
Yeah.
Literally, I've decided, because he had a bit of a kind of competition in his mind going on with Prince and Michael Jackson.
Right.
I mean, this is how quickly it went to his head, basically. Because he was as humble could be when we made the album. And then all of a sudden he's on the front page of Rolling Stone in America saying, I am a genius, right? And I think he started out as a bit of kind of, naughty self-aggrandizement, a bit like Muhammad Ali kind of style. But he very quickly started believing his own hype.
Right.
And
you think that's why you never reached higher higher planes?
I mean, he still did some amazing things, but my opinion, and I've told him this to his face, it's not, because we're back in contact now. He was on my podcast. He needs even if it wasn't me, he needs a kind of sub-editor for his ideas, or somebody to bounce off. So the first album sold like 10 million copies.
Wow.
Worldwide. And the second album sold 300,000.
Yeah. So it's what a roller coaster the music industry is. You must know it more than anybody.
Really?
Well, I know teaching's a big passion of yours, and I can remember seeing you in real life once. I was a New Deal kid down at Darnall Music Factory in Sheffield.
Oh, right, yeah.
I was a New Deal kid, and you used to come and do talks down there and talk to us and that kind of stuff. So even back then, I don't know how many years ago, probably 20 years ago or something now, where you had that passion to give something back to us young'uns coming through.
That's right. Well, actually, a friend of mine, Frank Wilkes,
used to
run Darnall Music Factory.
Yeah.
And I'm still in touch with him. We do all sorts.
Yeah.
He's always got some scheme going on.
Yeah.
And he, as part of the deal, we got to play Darnall Music Factory as well with M17. And
I introduced that gig.
Did you?
Yeah, I was the compere for that gig. Yeah, at the Academy in Sheffield. Yeah.
There you go. It's a good night, actually. Wearing Wednesday shirts as well. And then, so we did that. But education. It's interesting because it kind of came from my love and understanding of, my career would never have happened were it not for Meat Whistle, and that was paid for by the local council. It was run by Chris and Veronica Wilkinson. I will forever, until the day I die, thank them for their brilliant idea, which introduced me to all my friends who I'm still friends with, and my career. It gave me the confidence to do all that stuff. And one of my big kind of campaigns, if you like, or passions is to help young people find their path in a playful, no, playful is not the right word, in a less formal way, so help them to express themselves artistically and kind of find which ball their ball should fall into in the big pinball of life, and it's tough now because there's not so much in the way of youth clubs. Education has become much more formalized and monetized now, which I disagree with completely, by the way. I don't like. Until recently, I was principal of Tileyard Education. In fact, I just ended in January. And part of the reason I'm not there anymore, and it's because I feel a bit uncomfortable about the amount of money that people are being charged to be trained to do stuff where the qualification doesn't necessarily qualify you for anything. You're much better off, doing practical stuff. So anyway, I've always done lecturing, always supported young people. I was responsible for getting an under 25 representative on the Ivers Academy board for the first time, and now the younger people are driving the agenda for the biggest songwriting organisation in Britain, awards organisation and lobbying organisation. And I just feel obligated to give something back. It's not a "you look at me, aren't I great" thing. I'm not bothered about that. I don't need any more. I've got honorary doctorate of music from Sheffield, which is nice. But I don't really need any more awards or stuff. I just think I've got it all changed when I had kids, basically.
Yeah.
In late 90s. I suddenly started, as they were growing up, seeing the world through their eyes, and seeing, well, to this day, it's my opportunities were much greater than theirs, in my view. Even though nominally they've got amazing qualifications and stuff, it's a tough world out there for young people.
Oh yeah,
and they're kind of criticised in the press, and particularly the right wing press. Lazy, feckless millennials. A load of old bollocks. And we worked hard for our money. No, you didn't. You've gone through a period of 20 or 30 years where property prices have gone through the roof. No fault of yours. You didn't work for that money. I didn't work I bought a house in London for £360,000, and I just cashed in for like nearly 3 million. I didn't earn that money. That's unearned money. I'm not complaining, but I'm just saying. So all them people who say, "Oh, but they're not," older generation, we post-war, we had to really fight for it. No, you didn't. If you owned your own house, you were just making money by default all the time. So,
well, your education is very much appreciated. I had Martyn Atkins on the podcast, which I know you've had on.
He's a good lad. Yeah,
really good lad, and just from speaking to people like that in the industry that are giving back now, where he does his schooling from Chicago, but he still spent a little bit of time with me, just helping me out with some ideas that I had, and I had a little thing in my head where RGM was always started as a Sheffield thing, and when I asked him about when I'm trying to help bands at grassroots levels, because that's kind of where I specialize and try and give back a little bit myself as well, by putting them on, putting gigs on, and just help them through the magazine and stuff. I would just ask him, what kind of tips would you give to bands? And his advice was, be as creative as create memories for fans, rather than just put on a gig and then you're straight off after the gig, and then the crowd's there just like, okay, that's a gig. Try and create memories for fans, and that could be anything of standing on the merch stall, speaking to people, give somebody who's skinned a free T-shirt. Just being there for the people around you after the gig is more important than the actual gig itself.
And I'd argue also that try, if you're on a tour, which obviously we do lots of this stuff, try in even if it's only in a small way, make every gig different, so that if it might just be changing the set list or doing something special, or people understand if you are passionate about your music. They understand it. I mean, perfect example is John Rev, you know,
Yeah.
John McClure. It's impossible not to be enthusiastic about Reverend and the Makers, no matter what you taste in music, because the guy is just a dynamo, right? He just loves what he does so much, and therefore the audience loves what he does. He engages with the audience online. He even goes to people's fucking houses and plays in their houses sometimes. You know, I'm not saying everybody should do that, but you know, with M17, it's one of our main appeals, I believe, is our warmth and interaction with the audience live, because we really believe in entertainment. You know, it's not you're not like some you're not got some God-given talent that's handed down from on high, and you just got to turn up and perform, and then everybody, drops to their knees with awe. You know, you've got to be, and you're in the show business.
Mm.
That's why people come back to multiple shows. We've got a bunch of, like everybody, got a bunch of super fans and stuff. There are a couple of guys who have been to nearly 200 gigs of ours, for instance. That's way over the top, but that what you're seeking is that kind of loyalty, that brand loyalty.
Yeah.
And we don't have the biggest audience. If we put a record out, it doesn't sell a huge amount. It gets listened to a lot, of course. It's streaming services now, but it's more important to us to maintain the loyalty of the people who stuck with us all this time.
Yeah.
And that's a great lesson for any young band is to build up your audience that way. Not everybody's going to be world famous or even nationally famous, but you can make a living out of it.
Another tip Martyn said as well was the fans might not be in your city. So some bands make the mistake of trying to break their own city first, but your fans might not be there. The world's a big
That's
place
right.
outside of your own bubble. Get out there. Invest, take the chance to to lose money out there in the world, and just get out there and find where your tribe is really as well.
Yeah, and try different things. And please, I would urge people. I know a lot about this scene because I work with the Ivers Academy, so I get the inside dope on what's happening. Please, please, please don't fall for this big data bollocks. Everything should be, your main energy should be directed towards getting as many followers as possible and all that. Of course, it's a new world, so you got to look at that. But that's a false god to be worshipping, in my view. You've got to get out there. If you do it right, to put it in a nutshell, I believe if you do, as an artist, if you do things for the right reason, and you're passionate about it, and you do it with a sense of kind of artistic integrity, then people will dig it.
Yeah.
And the opposite is true. If you do it thinking, "Oh, I just want to be famous," and you just kind of go through the motions, that is likely to fail, or at least it might work in the short term, but it won't work in the long term. I mean, I'm 40 years on. People are still turning up in bigger numbers than ever to see M17 perform live. Our streaming figures get bigger every year. That's because when we started, we had an idea, an artistic idea, an integrated artistic idea behind what we wanted to do. From the way we presented ourselves, we didn't perform live back in the day, but TV, videos, album artwork, advertising, everything was integrated. Of course, songwriting, themes, etc., and try and do things at the highest possible quality level you can, both in production terms and songwriting terms. That's why, by the way, to get onto the current day, we are not releasing very much stuff at the moment because there just isn't the economic. There isn't the economic justification for spending say 3 to 6 months making an album to do it to the level that we want to do and the quality that we want to do. All we can do now is, because we're not going to sell giant amounts of it anyway, all we can do now is destroy our legacy if we do it badly.
I
You know,
interviewed Miles Hunt from the Wonder Stuff, and he said a similar thing. He's stopping recording. He's going to go out and do live gigs and stuff, but
yeah,
the exact same reason. It might cost him 10, 15 grand to record whatever he records, but he's never going to make that money back. So it's just not.
never.
Worth
It's
it.
not going to happen.
Mm.
Of course, it works in terms of profile,
Yeah.
but I'm just not convinced that there's that much of an appetite for stuff. And you know, as artists, you are what you eat. In other words, you know, your influence, you know, the zeitgeist around where you're at in your life affects what you write. I mean, I'm a 66-year-old man with two grown-up kids living in kind of middle-class luxury in London. Of course, it's not. It's not going to. The music that I write, if it's authentically coming from inside me, it's not going to sound the same as, you know, a poor lad coming from Sheffield living in a council flat. It's just not going to, no matter how much you'd like it to. So, I mean, obviously, I still write a load of stuff, and I do a load of stuff for artistic installations, and I'm doing a big gig in Sheffield, actually. I should plug, at the Octagon Centre on May the 6th, which is Coronation
My
Day.
birthday. My birthday. I'll put a link to the
Yeah.
gig on the podcast for you, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's going to be an immersive 3-dimensional sound.
Oh.
And I'm gonna be doing some new versions of some original music for Stowaway stuff in 3D, hopefully with some live strings as well, but also and some other stuff as well, some sound healing stuff and
Space.
some stuff that I've co-written with my son Gabriel, and also managed to get Steve Davis from you know, a snooker player, who's now a DJ and musician with his band, the Utopia Strong. He plays modular synth. He's playing, and Richard Norris from The Grid is going to do it as well. So it's going to be a great night.
Great, Nate. Nice one. I'll put a link to that.
Do not miss it. It's going to be probably a one-off concert. So
nice. Well, there's one other tip that we could give musicians as well that I took away from your book. Don't turn down a meeting with Clive Davis.
Yeah, that was funny. Oh my God! Yes, I'll tell him about that. So, we're in the middle of recording Luxury Gap in the townhouse in London, and we're under the cosh time-wise. You know, we've got like a week left to finish 3 or 4 mixes, and we were really busy. And then we got this phone call. We'd just been signed to Arista, which is Clive Davis. He was a legend in the music business. We'd just been signed to Arista in America. And he happened to be in London. And at short notice, we got this call from Virgin saying, oh, Clive Davis wants to have lunch with you. And I'm going, well, we can't. We're mixing these. We just can't do it. We don't have time. And say, so apologize, but tell him we can come down to the studio if he wants. We'll say
Yeah.
Next thing we know, he'd pulled all the promotion for Heaven 17 in America. Because these people talk about big heads. I mean, they have heads bigger than a planet. It's all about them. We are just tiny little moons, orbiting their giant sun, Anyway, so mate, that was a mistake. We should have downed tools and just schmoozed in for a couple of hours.
Well, we live and learn, don't we, mate? We live and learn. Well, there's loads still coming up. Your podcast is great as well.
Thank you.
So I'll put a link to the podcast as well on there. You've got volume 2 of the book coming out, I presume.
Well, I haven't written it yet.
Right. Okay, fair enough.
I've got to get an offer from the publishers or from my literary agent if thinks it's worth doing, because I did volume 1 in lockdown, so I had loads and loads of time. If I do volume 2, I've got to put aside a lot of other stuff. You know what I mean? So,
Well, we've teased a lot of stuff on the book. I urge anybody to download. I listen to the audio book so I can hear you read it to me.
Nah, the audiobook's good, actually. I would recommend that.
Yeah, great. It's great. And yeah, is Sheffield Wednesday going to go up this year?
I can't jinx it by saying that, can I?
Okay, fair enough.
I can't.
Sheffield United will go up.
Oh, United will go, but
I'd love to have Sheffield United and Wednesday in the Premier League again one day.
oh, it'd be great, wouldn't it? I don't have a problem with United going up at all. I think it's great. I'm just happy for the city, you know.
Yeah, nice.
But oh God, we've got to get out of this division, honestly.
As a Blade stuck in League One for many, many years, mate.
Fifth circle of hell, honestly.
Yeah.
Endless fucking Fleetwood towns, you know. Just hoofing the ball and rolling about on the floor. I can't deal with it anymore. You know, a lot of the teams that bomb off the table just don't want to play football. They can't play football.
Yeah.
So I don't blame them, but you know, this kind of obsession with the dark arts is getting ridiculous now. And again, and also to compound it all, I'm not one for kicking referees because I think they've got a very, very difficult job. But this, honestly, the standard of refereeing in League One is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Week in, week out. And I'm not just saying against Wednesday. I'm saying the standard is just not very good, you know. And so the FA need to have a serious look at how they train referees.
Yeah.
Because they're all, I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, we wish Wednesday all the best. As a Blade, anyway, I've got family members.
Thank you.
And so,
it'd be good to get us in the same division, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Yeah, definitely.
Hopefully the Premier League.
Martyn, really appreciate your time and your generosity with your time today. I've really enjoyed speaking to
you.
And yeah, I'm going to buy myself a ticket for my birthday to come and see your Octagon. That sounds like
brilliant.
And yeah, thanks for your time, mate. Appreciate it.
All right, mate. Thanks so much.